You can spend hours polishing a CV, tightening a cover letter, and making every sentence sound professional, then send it and hear nothing. And the uncomfortable part is that the application may not be bad. It may be accurate. It may even be impressive. But sometimes it can still feel as though it could have been sent to 20 other organizations, or maybe more, with only the name changed. And that, I think, is the most important thing people are failing to do when they apply for PR and communications jobs, according to the agencies I'm speaking to. They're describing themselves, but they're not making a particular employer feel understood. The good news is that this is not mainly a status problem. You do not need a grand title or 10 years of experience to start fixing it. Of course, that might help, but it's not needed. You need to treat the application as a small piece of communication with a real audience. Imagine an applicant who says that they're passionate about PR, hardworking and keen to learn, like everyone does. None of that is necessarily false or wrong. But if they cannot tell what kind of work the agency does, who its clients are, or what seems to matter to that team, the employer has to do all the work of believing the interest is real. And the signs are it's not. So before writing about yourself, read the agency's website, look at its clients, and choose one recent piece of work they did. Don't just collect facts for decoration. Ask what those facts actually tell you about the problems that this team is paid to solve. That changes the application because you're finally writing something directly to this employer rather than to the idea of a generic employer. Amanda Proscia leads hiring and development at LightSpeedPR because she owns the company. And in one of our recorded conversations, she described the difference between a junior she hired and the applicant who disappeared at the first hurdle.
Because I spoke to about 20 people for this role, and this woman who I ended up hiring, she brought in enthusiasm and a genuine interest, a passion, those things, those intangible things. And an old leader once told me, they said, hire enthusiasm. Skills can be taught. Enthusiasm, if someone comes to you and they're just phoning in their job, or they're watching the clock, or they don't really have an interest in the work or the client, that is going to be a problem every single. So this particular person, she came right out of college. It's hard to know what their skill set is at that point, but that level of excitement and enthusiasm and engagement and the follow-up messages I was getting, what she was asking of my other team members, and clearly, I can't tell you how many people I interviewed who clearly hadn't even read our website.
That website check sounds basic, right? But the employer is reading more into it than whether you found the About page. They're wondering, if you've not paid attention to us when you want something from us, will you pay attention to our clients and their clients' businesses when the work becomes difficult? Having worked on both sides of this, I was in journalism and in PR, I noticed the same problem straight away. The message may be polished, but it hasn't really been shaped for the person receiving it. And with the people that I've worked with, trying to help them get into stuff, I often see the pressure to sound impressive arrive before the slower work of deciding what this particular reader needs to see. Reversing that order makes the writing easier, and it makes it far more effective. But research on its own is not enough. You can quote the website back to the employer and still reveal very little. The next move is to turn what you found into one question that shows how you think. A generic question might be, what is the culture like? Common question people ask. A more useful question comes from a real choice you noticed. So perhaps the agency talks about moving quickly for technology clients, but also about giving senior strategic counsel to their clients beyond normal everyday press releases. You might ask how junior team members learn to balance speed with the need to challenge a brief, to sound like you're really thinking about this. You're not trying to catch anyone out. You're showing that you can notice two demands, hold them together, and ask how a practitioner handles the tension. It shows you're genuinely interested and genuinely thinking about the role. And this is much closer to the judgment that communications companies are actually looking for from you. Not, I'm keen and I'm purely enthusiastic, but I can think too. Ben Jacobson is the Chief Content Officer at InboundJunction, and he told me about a graduate whose question made her thinking very visible.
That's basically it. Like it wasn't generic questions. It wasn't your obvious, oh, I see you talked about this. Tell me more about that. It was much more, but I know this person says that, and how do you reconcile those concepts, or how do you, you talk about the need to do that and the need to do that. How do you balance those things? It was very like next level thinking that got me impressed.
Notice what made the question strong. It was not praise dressed up with a question mark. It showed that she had listened, compared ideas, and found something worth understanding. She did not need to pretend she'd already knew the answer. Her preparation made her curiosity credible and visible. Now, we've moved beyond the generic application. The employer can see that you notice their world and can hear you thinking about it. But there's still one gap. They cannot yet see what happens when you act. And this is where many applicants return to claims like, I'm proactive, I'm creative, I take initiative. It gets boring because it might be true, but everyone says it. The words are easy to write, so the employer still carries the risk. Do I trust them? Maybe this was just written by AI. So a small piece of relevant proof can change that. Now, it does not need, or it doesn't have to be, a free campaign that you've run or a huge speculative plan of how you would run one of their campaigns. It could be one short analysis of an audience, a university society project that had a real tangible result that you learned something from, that delivered something beyond just doing what everyone else does. Right? A media monitoring sample even. One company even said to me that they were interested when someone had analyzed the media about how it would apply to one of their clients. Or maybe a brief piece of writing that fits the kind of work the team does to show that you can write like them. So you're stating the assumptions, you're keeping it bounded. The point is to let your employer inspect one decision you've made and let them see it visibly. Komal Lath is the founder of Tute Consult in Mumbai in India, and she gave me a really striking example of what happened when a young applicant connected her homework to a gap she thought she could help fill.
We did that for a couple of people. We did not have that role set out, but they were very clear what they wanted to do, what they wanted to start. There was a 20-year-old who walked in and said, Komal, y'all don't have a division for influencer marketing. I'd like to run that on my own apart from what I'm doing. Take a chance on me. We did. That was the birth of a structured team within Tute to do that. She was 20. She just came in with that approach that I think she figured the gap. She figured that homework and she came in. I find that very, very interesting because you're adding value to something you're doing. Or you're going to tell me, hey, I'm going to reduce the workload off you because I want to learn this. So show me value and we take a bet on you.
I absolutely love that example. It is a big example, but there's no reason why you can't be doing that too. And you don't need to walk into an interview promising to create a whole division. The useful part is small here. She'd done enough homework to see a gap, and she could explain why her contribution would matter to the company. Look what happened. So the one missing thing is not a magic phrase. It's making the employer feel understood, then giving them evidence of what you can do with that understanding and what value you can offer. So if you choose one role and write one sentence naming what that employer does, who it serves, and what appears to matter in that job, then turn that sentence into one question about a real choice, a tension, or a pattern you noticed in the work, and then put one small proof beside it. If you have no past example, maybe create a short sample from a university society or a local organization or a public brief today. Put something together that shows you can think that way. And you can do all of that yourself. The harder part is judging whether your research, question, and proof are strong enough before an employer sees them. But at least you're going to be getting a much better head start than sending out that generic reach out. Now, if you would like some more clear, supported advice on this kind of thing, check out the gettingajobinpr.com website, because this is part of a lab I'm building to try and study what we need to do to get the right people into the industry for the next wave, the next era of communication. So I'm talking to agencies to find out what they need and what they see is happening next. And then I'm trying to get that across to people to help them learn the skills and actually adopt the skills and the right mindsets to become that next generation of next level employees in the comms world. So have a look at that, gettingajobinpr.com. I made it a really simple, crude website just so that it would be easy to find. And you can find out all the details on there about how I'm doing that. Hopefully this was useful. I'll do another one of these soon.